So from what we've heard, and again, what you thought we forgot, what's the most important potential application of this technology? And as a special treat, I won't read this one out. You can change your vote during the time, but you have to pick one. Or none. It's amazing how long it takes 93 people to vote. I'll take anything above 90, but if you start abstaining now, the evening's going to drag. So you do vote faster when I read them out, I think. I might have to read out the next one. Come on, 83, 84, come on. Well, don't test me on this. I really will just keep you waiting. Come on. 89. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Yes, thank you very much indeed. Thank heavens for that. I had no fallback plan there at all, really. Okay, shall we see how you voted? Oh, so it's interesting. Two-way out. Okay, I expected drugs and vaccines in there, and biofuels, which is interesting. We've not really said that much about biofuels so far. Can I just get your reactions to that? Jim, first of all?
Well, I steered away from biofuels because they're biological sources of fuels. They're never going to be a complete solution anyway. They're certainly going to contribute to replacement of petrochemicals, but we're still going to be relying on solar and nuclear and wind power. So I went for food security, actually. That is such a serious issue for human culture.
Right, and just say a little bit more about the kind of dream scenario in terms of these things and food security.
Well, we're floating on top of the green revolution, which most of Asia and many in the West have benefited from in terms of agricultural output from the 60s through the 70s. The yields, although the breeding is still going on, yields are declining. The amount of arable land that's required for food production is declining, and at the same time population is increasing, and standard of living is of course increasing and putting more pressure on food production, and we need to do something about that. It's an imperative there.
Right, and so, but what's a dream synthetic life solution to this, or synthetic biology solution here?
Well, some of the major yield losses are due to problems with drought, and with global warming as well being a threat. There are now genetic approaches to protecting plants from drought. So as a normal mechanism, most plants have systems which allow them to protect them quite substantially from drought very easily. And these are starting to come onto the market. But you still need to trigger these in place in the appropriate crop plants. And we have ability to predict weather, but plants don't do it, of course. We can do that, and we can trigger protection that way. Similarly with pests, we can by ourselves derive more information about the kind of pests and using biological methods for inhibiting losses from pest resistance, from pest predation. So you've got fairly straightforward approaches which are clearly applicable, and at the moment the limit is in the kind of information processing that you would put onto the plant to make the plant smarter essentially in terms of responding appropriately to these kind of stresses and improve yields.
Okay, just before we go to the next open question, I just want to ask, 2% of you, which by my maths is about 2 of you, voted for none of the above. So it sounds like there might be something else that you think might be a useful use of synthetic biology. Are either of you prepared to own up as to who you are and say what you came up with? Yes, can we we'll get a microphone to you, hang on. It just adds to the drama. What will the answer be as the microphone comes in?
So this is going to be a terrible anticlimax. I voted for none of the above on the general principle that it looks like a significantly important set of technological developments that we're very unlikely to correctly predict tonight what the most important outcome is going to be. Who would have predicted in 1948 it was going to be, I don't know, what do you think it is, the internet from the transistor?
Right.
So it's a principled, I think I'm likely to be wrong.
Right, yeah, in other words, you're the guy who doesn't bet on the Grand National, effectively. Fine, okay, you're saying it couldn't be anything else.
But can I come in here and make a point?
Yeah.
The way I voted for new organisms to clean up pollution, because if we don't save the planet, we're not going to have the planet in which to do all this other stuff anyway.
And how viable is that? Can Ben or Jim tell us? Is there a lot of work going on synthetic biology and cleaning up?
I mean, there are people who've made some wonderful suggestions. For example, use of plants to sort of clean up polluted areas, and there are proteins that will sequester certain molecules. We've already seen there's some interesting microbiology has been done around sort of dumps of chemicals around industrial sites. New species evolve naturally to sort of metabolize chemicals that we dump in the ground. So nature copes in the same way, and I think there are methods of sort of remediating soils that can be developed, and we can take nature's clues and incorporate those into organisms. But I think one of the things that we sort of need to think about is not just pollution, but also loss of resource. And I think one of the things we might think about using synthetic biology for is to make sure we hang on to the sort of things that we need to keep going forwards, things like minerals. One of the things that people aren't very aware of are the elements that are being lost in the globe. So phosphorus is an incredibly rare element on which we are all based, and it will run out. It will pour into the sea, and we'll all be in incredible trouble. So we can think about synthetic biology and perhaps using biology to sequester phosphorus in a form that we can reuse. The same can be thought about in terms of carbon dioxide sequestration and how we might use the products of carbon dioxide in bugs in a way that's productive. So I think we have to be creative rather than just think about solving problems that exist, but actually taking those problems and making something from them, an opportunity.
I don't think the Daily Mail have yet done world running out of phosphorus. That's got to be a headline that's waiting. But do we have to be careful? Because as much as we were saying right at the start, we have to be careful about building up the fears of this because it's new. Do we also have to be careful about building up the hopes, saying, oh yes, synthetic biology, that's going to solve the world's pollution problems, energy problems, clean up things. We have to be actually realistic here, don't we?
From a personal point of view, I don't know what Joyce raised the field of nanotechnology, and I think one of the things that really hit nanotechnology, it wasn't just the grey goo, but those threats and those fears basically filled a vacuum of product. We spent 15 years hyping nanotechnology, little bugs, the idea of Raquel Welch steering a sub to your site of disease, and it wasn't going to happen. We knew it wasn't.
For younger listeners, substitute Cheryl Cole. It's the same image, basically, right?
But it was. This wasn't going to happen, and yet nanotechnologists saw an opportunity to raise perhaps funding, being cynical, and the hype then created this vacuum into which poured ideas and notions of grey goo. That wouldn't have happened if people hadn't talked about nanotechnology and said it will do anything. And so I think we have to be cautious, we have to be realistic, and we have to explain. So,
Joyce?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think I didn't vote for novel sources of renewable energy, but I think that is an important one where we are actually quite close. The major oil companies are pouring a lot of money into synthetic biology, billions of dollars in America, into synthetic biology to develop new biofuels. And that is good because currently the biofuels that we're using are competing with food crops. And that's completely unsustainable in a world that's running out of food. So I think these kinds of things are important. There are enough that are nearby and near to future development that we can see where we might be going and we can have reasonable aims for how to get there. But I do agree with the gentleman at the back. The really big surprises are going to be, we haven't thought of them yet. There's going to be some big surprises out there.
And of course, an example of that, for instance, with biofuels, is if we can make progress in artificial photosynthesis, which is one use of synthetic biology where we are seeing some science.